Welcome Towson University alumni and our graduating students. I'm Margaret Paulson, the Young Alumni and Student Outreach Coordinator and a proud 2011 TU graduate. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar as part of Senior and Recent Grad Week. I wanted to briefly share some information about the Alumni Association before we begin. We are a free organization that you automatically become a member of once you graduate. We have a free online, alumni-only community, Tiger Connect, where you can connect with former classmates, register for events, and see special discounts, benefits, and programs only available to alumni. Some of our discount programs include discounts on home and auto insurance through Geico, discount tickets to the Maryland Zoo, the National Aquarium, and the Hippodrome, just to name a few. We also have an Alumni Alliance program where alumni can form groups based on shared interests, whether it be a student activity that you participated in as a student, geographical, location, cultural, or identity. Please feel free to visit alumni.towson.edu and look around the alumni website to see all of the benefits and services that we offer. This time, I'd like to introduce Tia. She will be leading today's presentation. She is the Career Coordinator for Financial Literacy and Off-Campus Employment at TU's Career Center. She co-chairs the Financial Literacy Working Group, which aims to create resources and initiatives for TU students so that they can improve their financial wellness. She also serves as an instructor for personal life and career planning. Tia, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I appreciate your warm introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so let me start by sharing my screen and then we can begin. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tia Howard, like Margaret said. There's two Tia Howards at Towson, so I typically use my middle initial to not be confused. What a joy to be somewhere with someone that has an identical name as you. So please excuse me. Let's see. Oh, I have to scroll. Please excuse me. All right. I use pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the career coordinator for financial literacy and off-campus employment. Excuse me, my keyboard is a little bit sensitive. At Towson's Career Center, which is located on the second floor of the Math Building in Suite 206. This fall, we are operating remotely, so all appointments, as if we were in person, are available via Handshake. You can meet with us to discuss your resume and cover letter. If you will newly be graduating Towson, congratulations in advance. We do have new grad appointments. We can also help with your preparation of your statements for graduate school. We can assist with a plethora of things, including mock interviews. So anything to help prepare you, be your best professional self moving forward, we can support you with. We also encourage you to visit our resources on towson.edu/career center. And if you have any questions, always feel free to email us at careercenter@towson.edu. I'll provide my email address at the end if you have any questions. Please excuse me if you see me shifting. I'm working off of two laptops, so if you see my head turning, that's exactly what's happening. Let's see if the scroll can cooperate today. I wish I could click instead of scroll, but here we go. Oh, here we go. Thank you all for your patience. Okay, so today we're going to talk about budgeting for financial independence. And some of you are like, well, what's the dreaded B word? Budget, right? So what does budgeting mean? If you really had to, I think a lot of people have some iffy feelings when it comes to making a budget, when it comes to the concept of budgeting. But what generally does it mean? It means making a plan for your money. So giving your dollars a job, sans, Dave Ramsey application. But what do you want to do with your money in order to reach your goals, right? So some people will say, well, I necessarily don't have lofty goals. My goal is to sustain. Okay, so that is a goal within itself. If you would like to give yourself a trip post-COVID or safely somewhere close, that could be a goal as well. If your goal is, I would like to treat myself to the iPhone 12 when it comes out, that would be a goal. So thinking about the goals that you have in mind and making your money work for you by creating a budget, right? So I touched on this a little bit, but creating your goals, right? So budgeting can seem really taxing if you don't know what you want to do with your money or you don't know where you're going. So why are you doing this work? Why does this make sense for you? So understanding what goals you have in mind, right? Whether they be small, sustainable, or large, so you can scaffold them, understanding what your goals may be and what you want to accomplish. But also keeping in mind of what your net income is. So different from gross. So I imagine if you are hired, let's say you had an hourly job at the pay rate of $17.50 an hour, your net income is not $17.50 and what you would make after working X amount of hours. It would be the amount that you're being paid. So the amount after taxes, the amount that's going to be listed on your paycheck. So if your income is inconsistent, I would encourage you to use the average of your last 3 paychecks, right? And then to make it a little bit more steady, followed by 3 months of pay. So if you were able to track consistently, determine what was your last 3 months of pay, and that would be your net income with that particular job. Next, what have you been spending? So sometimes you feel like, oh, has someone stolen money from me? Has something been, have I been a victim of identity theft? And you're like, no, that was just me and Amazon, right? It's happened to me before, right? So what exactly is happening with your money? I think a good way to start in order to create your budget plan is really to take a hard look at your debit card and your credit card, if applicable, for a minimum of 30 days. And again, we're going to use this similar to the inconsistent pay with net income plan, up to 3 months. What were your transactions? Whether you got gas, if you have a car, whether you purchased groceries at the supermarket, let's see, whether you did make some fun purchases on Amazon, or you have your subscriptions. I know with the pandemic, a lot of us have been, indulging in some really great TV. So whether that's the HBO Max, the Disney Plus, the Hulu, what have you been spending? Where's your money been going? Or if you are quote unquote fortunate to necessarily loan a subscription from a friend, you wouldn't necessarily include that. But what are you actually spending your money on? No, oh no, that's not what I want to do. Please hold. Okay. My Mac is not cooperating with me today, so I thank you for your patience in advance. Okay, please excuse me. Okay. Pandemic issues. All right. So if you will be newly graduating, you say, Tia, I don't necessarily know what my net income will be. I know how much I may be getting paid if I've accepted an offer, but I don't necessarily know where to go from there. So I'd recommend a free resource to you. I think one of our favorite prices, well, my favorite price is free. I call it free 99. So the federal paycheck calculator through Smart Asset. And what Smart Asset will allow you to do is if you input some information, it'll allow you to make it and estimate your gross pay. So this would be before taxes, but at least puts you somewhat in the ballpark of how much you may be taking home. So you would enter things such as your marital status, whether you be paid hourly or if it was a salaried wage, if there was overtime pay, some positions that may be applicable for you, where the job is located. This is going to be important for the type of taxes that would be withdrawn. The pay frequency. So are you being paid bi-weekly? Are you being paid weekly? Are you being paid monthly, which would require a little bit more of discipline if you're getting all of your money for the month up front, and the possible tax exemptions that you would like to claim. So if you enter that information, it would be able to provide you with a number that will place you in the ballpark of what you may be earning. Okay, we're going to work on this roll again. Let's see. Okay, so Understanding your full list of transactions on your debit or credit card after you have listed everything that you have possibly paid for within the last 30 days up to 3 months, you want to categorize them. And this is important because what categories are your purchases going through to? And the next question is going to be, are they necessary, right? So how much have we been spending on food? So we're going to look at the food that we're purchasing at the grocery store. If you're doing grocery shopping, we're also going to look at those DoorDash expenses, takeout expenses, all of those. And then we're going to narrow it down a little bit further, but how much have you spent on food within the last 30 days? Housing, if you are currently renting a space to live, if you currently have roommates, if you currently are living at home and contributing towards expenses at home, how much are you paying on average for that? Transportation, if you are driving, how much are you paying with gas? Your car insurance, things of that nature. Any expected repairs, so we know that every certain amount of miles we may need brakes, or any expected expenses that you may be having come out. You would use that list that for that particular month. Entertainment, how are you keeping yourself entertained during the pandemic? Are there things that you may be paying for to watch? Pay-per-view is still out and being used. So what are you using? What things of entertainment have you been purchasing? Takeout, so I talked about this a little bit earlier, food that we may be picking up or maybe having delivered. Again, those pesky subscriptions, so Amazon, Netflix, things of that nature. But also knowing myself, I pay for AAA, and that's an annual subscription. So I'm only going to see that cost once a month, unless you're divvying things annually. Otherwise, I should say. And your savings, if you are currently contributing to your savings, we want to know how much you're spending for it, and then categorizing, right? So if you are saving for a trip to go abroad after COVID in celebration of making it through the pandemic, we want you to list that down. How much money are you contributing towards that? If you want to purchase another phone, how much money are you contributing towards that, right? So there's 3 ways to do this. You can either download a copy of your debit credit card statement. That way you have a physical copy and you could possibly upload or write on. You can make a spreadsheet through Excel, or you can manually record your transactions. And sometimes manually it sticks it to you a little bit harder and you're like, ooh, I have to write that I paid for this. Okay. I may or may not do it again, but sometimes there's a little bit more of an emotional tug with manually writing things down if you are able. Okay, there we go. It has popped up for me. All right. So an important question you want to ask yourself after this has been completed: do your monthly transactions outweigh your take-home pay? So are you spending more than what comes in? If so, you want to look at the categories and you really want to narrow down what is unnecessary for you. So if you found that you did takeout, you've paid for delivery fees the last 4 days, maybe we can cut down with that and prepare some food at home. If you've made some other purchases and you're like, I'm really happy with what I purchased, but I didn't need to purchase that, those things you could take into account. Then you want to look at your categories and see, based on each category, what percentage of your income are you spending on each category? If you're pretty content with how your spending is going, you can categorize that. Out of 100%, you're putting X% on food, you're putting X% on housing, so on and so forth. And this could be a way that you could plan out your budget. But if not, I apologize for this. This is not the best. Okay. If not, make time to review your monthly budget at a minimum. So at a minimum, you need to make sure that you're kind of doing this and making sure that you're listing your categories, making sure that you're knowing where your money is going, making sure that you know where things are being allotted. But really set a reminder to yourself to look at your accounts daily. If you're making a lot of transactions with your debit card, we don't want you to become a victim of identity theft. But unfortunately, if something were to happen, by looking at your accounts daily, you can see where your money may be going. And it might be $2 or $3 that you may not account for. And you definitely want to follow up with that sooner than later, because that could really impact you in the long run. But to the right, if you can see, I have an example spreadsheet of what someone has basically placed out for their needs. So going grocery shopping, their electricity, some of their utilities, phone and internet. Remember to keep track of those because all of these things, if you're required to pay them, those need to be paid. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Moving forward, here's some apps that you could use if you're like, okay, well, I've taken note of what I may have spent within the last 30 days, but you know what, Tia, this is a little bit of a drag. I can't commit to this in the moment until I need some momentum, right? So I'm actually going to go from right to left. Truebill is an app that you can download that can actually track for you what your spending history has been. They can also work to negotiate some of the subscriptions that you have. So if you find yourself subscribing to something arbitrary that you did not cancel before the free trial, Truebill will alert you and say, hey, we see that you've been spending money towards X. Do you want us to look into this? They could see if you could pay less money, then you can look into whether you need to cancel it or not. So that's something that you could automate for yourself. Every dollar is more aligned with the Dave Ramsey method. So with all of your net income, you're giving your money a job, and you literally have to allot every dollar that you have made into this app. Mint is a little bit more comprehensive in saying this is what you've spent. These are the areas that you're going. It makes categories for you. However, it's not the best in taking account with some of the subscriptions that we talked about, those monthly, and not necessarily monthly, I used to say more the quarterly or annual subscriptions. It doesn't necessarily do the best job in taking account of that, but it's a good way for you to see your snapshot. Now, there are more apps out there that exist, but here are an example of 3 that I thought would be helpful for you to get on the journey if you have not started already. Okay. All right. So if you're like, Tia, I want to make this super simple, what can I do? The 50-30-20 savings method, right? So that literally breaks down your net income to 3 categories. So 50% of your net income should go towards your needs. So housing, again, if we're paying rent, we're paying towards a mortgage, we have a roommate, there are financial expectations of you within that area, that would fall under needs. Transportation, if you have to go somewhere at this point during the pandemic, so putting gas in your car, the insurance towards anything transportation related, anything of that nature, that would go towards transportation. A quick tip, for those of you that are home during the pandemic that may be responsible for car insurance, if you have not done so already, please call your insurance carrier and let them know that you are not traveling as frequently as you may have been during the pandemic. There may be an pre-pandemic, I should say, there may be an opportunity for you to have your premium lowered. In turn, that could save you more money. For me, it saved me about $15 a month. So it's something that I'll recommend for you to do. Groceries. So there's been this meme going around of this, I don't want to call him a gremlin. I would say more of a zombie. And it's like your vegetables staring at you after you put takeout in the fridge. So if you find yourself in that boat of not necessarily using what you purchase, consider your groceries, right? Considering the benefit, if you have access to freeze things, freeze your vegetables, freeze some of your fruits, let them thaw out and kind of experiment with that. But that's a way to make your money go further and not literally put your money in the trash, but not utilizing the things that you have picked up in the grocery store. Your utilities. So again, these are things that you need to function. If you are living in an apartment, living in a house, contributing towards this, you need to pay BG&E. And quick note, your cell phone, your utilities, these are things that are not necessarily generally listed on your credit score. However, if you stop paying them or fall behind with your payments, they quickly pop up. So please keep this in mind and something that you need to prioritize. Healthcare, really important during this time. So if you have any associated copays, any costs, any expected visits, I know for myself, I see an allergist once a week. So I don't necessarily have to pay for that, but once a month I do have to pay for a certain shot. So I have to divvy that out. I have to, consider that copay, and I put that aside. All of that is going into your needs. What do you need for survival at this time? So your 30%, your wants. So again, the takeout that we talked about, the entertainment, any of your hobbies, the new tech goals that you had, your 30%. Put this in the wants category. Your 20%. So thinking of any debt that you need to repay, thinking of your emergency savings. At this point, you should be working to save $1,000. And that might be a little bit lofty, and that's okay, but it's something that you continuously can work towards. And as you go on and graduate after Towson, become a little bit more financially secure. We're hoping for that. We're trying to prepare you for that. You're going to work towards saving 3 months. Retirement. No one wants to really think of retiring in their 20s and their 30s, right? Or a little bit later, but your goal is to take care of the older you. So when you're sitting in your 60s and 70s and so on, you want to make sure that you're contributing this money now. That way you can take advantage of compound interest. And you want any type of savings goals. We talked earlier, you want to make sure that you have a trip post-COVID. This is where the 20% will go. Now, some of you are like, well, Tia, I think 30% is a little bit too high for my wants. You could swap that. 30% could go towards your savings and 20% can go towards your wants. I appreciate your patience. Okay. It's like waiting for the dial to pop up. Okay, so make sure to pay yourself first. So what I mean by that is we really want to focus whether you put 20% or 30% towards your savings. You want to make sure that you are always getting that money first, because sometimes we'll talk ourselves into, well, I'm just going to get that. It'll be once. And then once turns into repeated times and you find yourself in a jam. Whereas if you would have automated your savings or made sure that you contributed to your savings first, you wouldn't necessarily have found yourself in this hard spot. So if you're like, I need to save me from me, don't mind yourself automating your savings, right? So making sure that your money is kind of quote unquote taken from you before you have the opportunity to necessarily see or spend it so it can start growing. Okay, so if you're like, Tia, that's a little bit too much, how do I do this? Here are some savings apps that you can use to start that process. So Digit. Digit allows you for a $2.99 a month monthly fee after your initial trial. It uses algorithms to analyze your spending, and it deducts different amounts of money from your account and then applies them to your savings goals. So you can set out, what you want to save towards. This is going to be my emergency fund. This is going to be my saving for technology fund. And you get a 0.10 saving bonus, 0.10 savings bonus every 3 months. So there's unlimited withdrawals with this. So if you do need to withdraw the money, there's no penalty for that. And there's overdraft protection. So again, if you have something that may not be inconsistent with your monthly purchases and Digit over withdraws, you get that money back, no penalty, no problem. Capital, which is spelled with a Q, they have different fees. It's $3, $6, and $12 monthly fees, depending on what type of plan that you use. It also allows you to have a pre-built investment plan if you are new to investing and would like to invest. So that is a perk of the account. Again, like Digit, it does track your spending and allows you to save towards multiple goals. So it comes to be a point of preference, depending on which one you like. Acorns has a $1 monthly fee. This rounds up your purchases to the nearest dollar. So if you purchase a cup of coffee for $3.67, it will then round up that 33 cents to $4 and invest those 33 cents towards something. And then you can see your money growing that way. Or if you're like, well, I just kind of want to do this through my bank, Simple is an option for you. It is a banking app, unlike the rest of the 3 apps, where it does provide a checking account and it does provide a high yield savings. And I'll get to high yield savings in a moment. There is no monthly fee for that, and all of that is automated. You do get a free Visa card to use, and then there are ATM locations provided throughout the nation that you can withdraw your money for free. But there's no physical location that you would do your banking out of. Okay, awesome. So for the month of October, can anyone tell me through the chat, if you bank with a traditional bank or credit union, what your savings account interest rate is, if anyone knows? And I cannot see the chat. So if you could assist me, Margaret, if you see anybody post. If not, that's okay. I'm just curious.
I'm looking at mine right now and I'm like, I don't know if I even know.
Okay, no worries. So just as a heads up, the average savings percentage for a traditional savings account is 0.09%, right? It's not a lot at all. Some people are like, oh, well, I do my checking, my banking together, but you're not really getting any additional money, or the money that you should be getting by traditionally having your savings account through your bank. So one thing that you can look into is your high yield savings account. Now, mind you, 0.60% is a lot higher than 0.09%. So it's something. This number was a lot higher than the pandemic, but we're doing the best that we can, right? But here are four different apps, four different companies that you can work with that you do not need to have a traditional banking account with or a credit card with in order to receive more money and allow your money to grow while you're working on this budgeting journey. So American Express, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally, Synchrony, these are all online based. There's no minimum balance required. So if you go to Magnify Money, the percentages will change on these savings accounts. They fluctuate. So currently for the month of October, it is 0.60% for all four of these accounts. That may change, and there are accounts that have less. So for example, Capital One is 0.50% for the month of October, but there's no minimum balance requirement. So you can literally put in as little as $1. There's no monthly fees. There are certain accounts though that do have, minimum balances of upwards of over $1,000, if not higher. So you definitely want to pay attention for that while you're shopping for one. I think one of the perks of these is, again, save you from you. Making sure if you don't want to access this money, you're really serious about your goals. There may be variances with ATM access, meaning that you may not always have a card to instantly withdraw your money. So your money is going to stay there until you're able to wire it back to yourself, which may be 2 or 3 business days. You're able to input money into these accounts by connecting it through your bank account. So electronic transfer, wire transfer, or writing a check. If people still write checks, I do from time to time, but not as much. So these are ways to make sure that your money can grow so you can work a little bit more avidly towards your savings goals.
Portia just typed in that her account is 0.2%.
All right, so 0.2%. So that's a little bit less than a higher yield savings account. So something for you to consider, because you can get an additional 0.4%. But thank you so much for researching and looking into that, because usually you're going to save more money and you're going to get more money with a high yield savings account just because there's less access to it and you're able to accrue more money. Okay. One thing I wanted to give you a quick tip on while we're talking about budgeting, I'm not necessarily talking about paying debt at this moment, but I do want you to focus on saving the money that you have. And this applies to those of you that may be logging in that have credit cards, right? Credit cards, if used properly, can be one of the best interest-free loans that you have on a regular basis, right? If you know how to use the system accordingly. And really, credit card companies really focus on taking money from you, taking advantage of you not being able to necessarily pay back what you borrowed within a month's time. And then that's how they get rich, off the fees that they're taking from you. So I wanted to point this out really quickly as you're working on budgeting. Take this into mind so that way you can keep more of your money. You'll notice that if you have a credit card, there is a payment due date. So that is going to be a consistent date throughout the month. That's the due date that's going to be listed in bold, big print on your statement. And they really only want you to pay attention to that. But one of the things I want you to look at and really investigate is your billing cycle. So your billing cycle is usually an average about 28 to 30 days of when your activity occurs on your credit card. And what happens is as your billing cycle closes, that's going to be the money. Let's say your billing cycle closes on the 30th of the month. That is going to be the date that the fees are calculated for your credit card. 9 out of 10, this is going to be a very different date from your due date. Usually there are a few days away from each other, upwards of a week, a little bit more. It may vary on you and your company, but I want you to pay attention to that, because sometimes people are like, well, I paid by my due date. I paid in full by my due date. Why do I have these fees? Because you did not pay by the time your statement closed. So that's something, if you have a credit card or you get a credit card, I really want you to look into. What date does your statement close, right? If you are able to, and I really want you to all to get in the habit as you're calculating your savings within your budget, to be able to pay off your credit card each month, right? That's how you get the interest-free loan. If you're paying before the end of your billing cycle, if you're not paying before the end of your billing cycle, that's where you wind up paying more money. And again, also not really focusing too much into credit, but after your statement, when your billing cycle closes, whatever amount that's listed on your account, that's the amount that's going to be sent over to credit bureaus to determine your credit score, your credit worthiness, and your credit utilization. So basically seeing if you had $1,000 credit card and you're using $900 of that, and your statement closes on the 30th and we're reporting that $900, you're not necessarily using your credit card as wisely. However, if you know your statement closes on the 30th and you have $900 used out of $1,000 and you pay that money off and it clears by the 29th, guess what? By the 30th, 0%. You haven't necessarily used anything. That's an interest-free loan. Do you see how that works? You want to make sure that if you are not able to pay your credit card off in full by the billing cycle close date, by that statement closing, to pay off at least up to 30% of your balance, if not less. This is going to make sure that you're pushing towards a greater credit score. If you could push to 10% or less, so $100 or less out of that $1,000, that ensures over time of you really ensuring for yourself a better credit score, a higher credit score. That's what I mean. Because it shows more responsible usage. So that's just a quick way that you could save some money on your credit cards as well. But those were the tips that I had for you in reference to starting out, really understanding where you may stand with a budget. Here's my email address. I will close out of this because my Mac has betrayed me this afternoon, and we'll take some questions.
We did have a question for Portia about the for the high yield savings. Don't you have to leave the principal amount there for a certain amount of time, for like a year or more?
It depends on the account. So some of that may vary monthly, but that also depends on the account. So check the terms because each of those 4 accounts that I listed will have different terms. So it depends on the high yield savings account. Some of that is monthly. You're welcome.
That looks like that might have been our only question. So thank you, Tia, so much for leading this presentation. I always find it interesting because I've sat in on a couple of them and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this, or I should look into it. And I say it every time and then I remember to do it.
Wait, there might be a second. Okay, there's a wait. One more question.
No, totally fine.
Portia, take your time.
Yeah, there's no rush.
Excuse me if I mispronounced your name. What are some things we should be looking for in a good credit card? Okay, so thinking about credit cards, what are your goals? Again, going back with budgeting, is your goal to travel? Is it to have cash back, right? So what are your goals? What are the perks that the credit card may offer? Excuse me, I would think number 1 is to have it with a reputable company. So thinking about your Capital Ones, thinking about if you have a little bit of a higher credit score, so I'm talking more of the high 600s, 700 and onward, your Discovers, your American Express, anything along those lines. I think some of the smaller banks, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. You also want to look for percentage rates, right? So usually if we go to the store today, I like Old Navy. So if I go to Old Navy, they're like, do you want to save 20% today by getting a credit card? Store cards are not necessarily the best cards to have. They're some of the easiest cards to get, but they have really high percentage rates, right? So if you know that you are addicted to this particular store, you're always going there to shop, you may not want to necessarily have a credit card with them, right? Save you from you. But also thinking about if you're looking for a credit card, what are the perks that they have? Is it a reputable company? What is the interest rate? So interest rates could be anywhere from approximately 15% to about 28%. When you're looking at those credit cards from store cards, they're upwards in the high 20s. So that's something you want to think about. So I would go for a general credit card. I know CQ does have a student card. If you do not have a history of credit, I believe it's called the Inspire card. It automatically offers you a $500 limit, so you could start building your credit. So it depends on your goals. I would say look at your interest rate, reputation, I'm sorry, I can't speak, reputation of the lender and the company. So go for some of the big names. I know Capital One is really great for you building credit or helping to repair credit. But I would say look at those first, but depending on your goals, number one answer. Does paying student loans help build credit? So let me say it like this. Student loans are what we call installment loans. So similar to, let's see, a car purchase. If you had a note, let's say you get $16,000 to pay off your car, you pay off the car, you don't get $16,000 more dollars. That's it, right? So sometimes it increases your line of credit. You diligently paying on it can help your credit. You should be paying on your student loans and not defaulting. That's not one of the number one ways that you could hurt yourself. But after you pay your credit off, after you pay your student loans off, there is a chance that your credit will dip temporarily. I can't explain the justification behind this, but it happens. But it does help because you have a less balance that you're using, and it shows responsible payment. Really what credit bureaus want to see when calculating is that you have experience with a diverse number of profiles. So what I mean about that, student loans, car notes, or revolving credit cards. So the typical card where if I have a $1,600 limit, I'm paying off that $1,600, I get, revolving. I'm saying installment, revolving. So short answer, yes, but at the end, if you pay it in full, temporarily, no. You're welcome. Other questions? All right.
Good. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And Tia, thank you so much for leading this presentation.
You're more than welcome. Have a great weekend. Happy, safe Halloween, and may everyone continue to stay safe during the pandemic.
Make sure you follow the Alumni Association on our social media channels. I've just posted them in the chat, and we hope to see you in future events, and have a great rest of your day.